We are ready to go. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I am Elizabeth Colon, the host of Oye Conversation. And today I have a fantastic, fabulous woman that I had the pleasure of meeting. Actually, I heard so much about her that she must have been stalking me because we were in an event one evening and coincidentally, she was sitting on the table next to me and she came up to me and said, "Are you Elizabeth?" And I was like completely shocked because I had never seen this person anymore. And voila, here we are today. Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about Carmen. Carmen Giaconi is currently the executive clerk for Cook Operations and Administration for the newly elected clerk of the Circuit Court for Cook County, Iris Martinez. Prior to joining Clerks Martinez administration, Carmen was a 26-year veteran of the Cook County Sheriff's Office. Amazing. And then you were a deputy sheriff in 1994. In 2013, Carmen attended the prestigious FBI National Academy and is a proud member of session number 252. Since her graduation from the National Academy, Carmen continues to participate and currently serves on the FBI National Academy Northern Illinois Division Board as the third vice president. As a matter of fact, Carmen is currently the only female member of the FBI NAA Northern Illinois Board and the first Latina on the board. Congratulations to that. Now, a little bit personal background on Carmen. She enjoys community outreach. She participated in the Sheriff's Office Senior Academy and provided an overview of the Court Services Department and the Civil Division to the participants. She partners with schools and social service agencies to provide gifts during the winter holiday season, clothing and blankets during the spring, books for students during the summer, and backpacks filled with school supplies in the fall. I want to hang out with her more often. And when she is not doing all of that, Carmen enjoys spending time with her husband, Mike, and their 5 children and 3 grandchildren. She believes in compassion, respect, and doing for others exactly what she does for her own family. Nothing less is acceptable. And our topic today is your purpose, your rules. No need to apologize. Just smile and take the seat at the table, which is powerful. And I love that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about guilt, regret, fear, and pride. So welcome, Carmen.
Thank you. I think you said it all. Do we have to keep going? Can we go right to questions?
No. You have an amazing background.
Thank you.
And, and this is just, I think, half of what I pulled, and I didn't even realize how much I pulled. But, first of all, thank you so much for all the work that you do in our community and for being the first Latina female and many things in your life, I'm sure. But just being the first Latina on this board that you're on. And, as we were engaging in sort of like, what should this topic be about? You're very passionate about the topic that you gave me, your purpose, your rules. Why don't you share a little bit more about why you are so passionate about talking about this?
Well, part of the reason is that for, first of all, as a woman, for most of our life, people like to tell us what our roles should be. And instinctively, when we're born, our role is automatically assigned. We're going to be mothers or wives right away. Those are the roles at birth assigned to us, right? You're going to be somebody's mother or somebody's wife. And trying to live and grow outside of those roles and defining other roles, not just for yourself, but for your children and the community at large, is a lifelong purpose. And so I found early on that things that I felt that were maybe uncomfortable were things that I had to do simply because people thought I shouldn't be doing them. And that's part of finding your purpose and making your own rules. Yes, I wanted to be a mother. That's how I ended up with 5 children. And being someone's wife wasn't something that I had thought that to me, I didn't have to be a wife to be a mother. I didn't associate the two growing up. And that may sound strange, but I just didn't. It didn't. It wasn't something that I felt. And I think well, I know now that I'm an adult that it was more because I felt that the role of a wife was restrictive. Like watching my mom as I was growing up, and the role that she decided, or how she decided, I should say, to play out the role of a wife wasn't something I liked. Like I wasn't gonna, me and my mom, she'd wake up in the morning and she'd make my father breakfast and she'd bring it to him. He didn't have to get out of the recliner. He was in front of the TV. She'd bring it to him.
Yes.
Entonces llegó, lunchtime or dinner time, and she had that prepared, and she brought that to him. She brought his salt. She brought the pepper. She brought the everything to him. And to me, I'm like, if that's so, I want someone serving me like that. Like I don't.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how I saw that role, and so that's why I think I didn't associate the two. So it was really important for me to define what my role as a wife was going to be, and I didn't want it to be that. So it's kind of like those little things you go through in life that you're not sure exactly what you mean until you have to go through it. So for everyone else, I'm going to tell her that that's really important for them every day, whether you're young or old. Figure out what role you're playing, and if that's really you playing that role, if that's really you. I think we were talking even before we came on about being yourself, and
Yes.
how important that is. So make sure that you create the role. The role doesn't make you.
That's great. I've been having recent conversations quite often now, more than ever before, about Latina women following these culture beliefs, right? Like struggling with this guilt of my parents want me to be this way, or this is how I was grown, and this is how I grew up, but this is really who I want to be, right? I want to make money. I want financial independence, but I also want to respect my culture and be there. So what kind of rules did you create for yourself that said, I'm not going to do it this way?
Pretty much how we started this, go with the flow. Those are always my rules. I am really a go with the flow person. For a long time, I know when we talked about, regret and fear and how those are kind of the roadblocks we put in our own way. And then we allow others to pick up those blocks and build the wall. And then as we're walking our path, we're wondering where the wall came from, like it came out of nowhere. And it's like, mira tonta, you gave them the bricks, your fear, your pride, you gave them all that. So in essence, take responsibility for building your own wall. No one stopped you. You did it yourself, and you give people the tools to do that. So I'm a go with the flow person. Nothing in my life was the way I would say anyone else would be, well, my parents viewed for me. It wasn't the proper way. I got pregnant right out of high school, and my father, God rest his soul, pensó que, pulling me out of Humboldt Park and moving me to Skokie was going to save me from the things that happen in life, that happen whether you're a Latina or from the suburbs of Skokie. Like life happens to you. It has nothing to do with the neighborhood and everything to do with experiences and the decisions and the choices you make. So mi pobre papa, he thought, okay, let's get out of this neighborhood because all these bad things are happening. And I know we discussed it. I had a brother, I was born and raised on Maplewood in Lemoyne. I still remember my address, 1505 North Maplewood. Still remember it. Maplewood in Lemoyne, and my going to Von Humboldt Elementary School, and my friends and how my neighborhood was. And, my parents lost, I had an older brother who was part of a gang, and he was murdered in Humboldt Park in the 80s. And so that affected my parents so much, especially my father. He's like, let me get them out of here, and he did. He moved us to Skokie thinking he was going to give us everything, and thought he was doing everything right, and his kids were going to be perfect now because they were being raised in Skokie. And right out of high school, I didn't get a chance to go to college because I got pregnant right away. So at that time, it was pretty embarrassing for my father. My mom took it in stride. Well, tiene que hacer lo que tiene que hacer. Like, do whatever you got to do. But, I'm not raising your baby is basically what she told me. I'll help you. She bought the crib. She bought, stuff like that. But, that's your decision. You're going to do you. And I think my whole life I've been lucky and fortunate to be surrounded People find when you say keep your circle tight, they find that statement is confining. Like, why do you want to be part of a circle? That's not, no, I've always kept my circle tight. And the way I picture my circle is it shrinks and expands as I need it to in my life. So growing up, my sisters, from the time I was little, mira, se sentaban conmigo en la mesa de la cocina. I was amusement. They'd sit me at the table and they'd start talking and they couldn't understand me, but I'd be like, ha, 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 ha. They always sat me at the table, whether they could understand me or not. It started that young with my sisters. And growing up, my sisters and my mom kept it going for me. No matter whether they agreed with my decisions or didn't agree with my decisions, we fought, we had disagreements. If I needed to be protected, they put me right in the middle. They tightened up around me. And when I was strong enough, they'd let me back in and let me go do my thing. That's how it's been with my family. That's how it's been with my friends. That's how it's been with coworkers. And that's how it is today. I have several circles. They don't always mix, but they all touch each other. And that's kind of what has helped me move through life. I never got a chance to go back to college. And that's because we always want to make things better for our kids, right?
Right.
So there I go.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had my baby. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this again. I have my oldest son. Okay, ya aquí me voy a arreglar. I'm going to do things right from this point on. And before I had a chance, I got pregnant with number 2. So college got put on hold again. And ahí seguí por ahí pa'lante.
That's wonderful. I mean, and it's, you have a beautiful story. So there's 2 things you touched on that I want to talk a little bit further on. Growing up in Humboldt Park, right, and your parents taking you to Skokie, or not you, but the entire family, right, because they wanted to make sure that you were safe. And then the circle, the community. And, there must be a lot of women and probably men alike who still live in Humboldt Park or in communities where they don't feel that there's opportunities or possibilities for them, right? And we have a bigger problem in society, right? How do we address the gang violence? How do we address opportunities for our communities? But what are your thoughts around, I moved to, so let me backtrack. I came to the suburbs too out of fear for my 2 boys, right? And sometimes I think about the regrets that I have from taking them away from a culture that's very diverse in the city, right? Because where we live, we don't have that. Enriching them in their Puerto Rican heritage and things like that. But I also know that part of their lives, they've been enriched with some things, and then the other part, they have not. And they've created their opportunities. So someone who lives in a community where, again, there's not a lot of opportunities for them, and they struggle and they just hit that brick wall that you're talking about. What is the solution to that? It's not, is it moving away from a community that you grew up in, your love? Is it the connections to that tribe, the community that you built around yourself, around you? Because I think it's equally important. What is, based on your experience as a sheriff too, right? Because I'm going to say that you've encountered a lot of violence out there. So you will have better insight than any of us probably watching this today.
So one of the things that you said describing it is, sometimes you feel regret because you had to move your kids to the other. And that's one of the things that I struggled with. When we first moved to Skokie, I was angry because, mira, 13 years old, going from Humboldt Park, and I've said this to people before, I can laugh at it now, but I cried forever. Wow. 13 years old, going through puberty, wasn't exactly, and you're going to pluck me from Humboldt Park and move me to Skokie. No one looks like me. No one speaks Spanish. No one. And so I was angry. And part of it was like, nobody's like me. Like, why would you do this to us? Like, and I used to feel, as I grew up, I kept that attraction. I kept going back to the neighborhood. I used to ride my bike when I got from Skokie to Milwaukee Avenue to Logan Square.
Wow. That's a ride.
And ride my bike because, and my grandmother still lived by North Avenue and Holman, North Avenue and Kimball over there. I go visit anything. I used to get up early because my mother, igual, my mom didn't speak English that well. Living in Skokie for my mother was difficult.
Sure.
She would get on the bus para jugar bingo donde estaba por ahí because they didn't have bingo up in Skokie. I'd get up and catch her on the bus to get to the city, anything to get back to the city. When I got older and even working in the sheriff's office, like you said, you have to find ways. That's always going to be my community. Always. And so that goes back to the larger speaking of the issues we have. The issue is that everyone's good for talking about, oh, we have to care for our communities, our communities need this. Okay, so what are you really saying? Your community or your neighborhood? Because those are two distinctly different things. I live in the city now. The neighborhood I live in is up on the northwest side. So when I talk about community, I need to be talking about more than just my northwest side neighborhood, because my community is where I come from. My community is where my kids may attend college. My community is where my nieces and nephews may be working. My community is where my coworkers have to ride the bus and train to. That's all part of my community. So when we have people standing up talking about change and what we need to do and how we can make things better, they use the word community so loosely that that's like one of the things. I know I told you before, like, me da rabia, I get angry.
Yes.
And hearing them talk, I want to say, bro, you're just grabbing your damn neighborhood. You're not talking about the community. Your community is more than just where you lay your head at night. If you truly care about where you came from, where you're going, and everyone that is going to touch your life that day, then you understand what community is. It's not just where you're parking your car at night and, you know, whether they have la llave ahí and not have to worry about it, or leave your door open and not think twice. That's your neighborhood. So the first thing is to get people to realize that when they're talking, because I truly believe that we are mostly good. The majority of us are good people. The majority of I sheriff's office 26 years. The majority of us are good people. Do we make mistakes? Did we make mistakes? Absolutely. But we make mistakes as community members every day. The first thing is admitting that, oh yeah, I haven't really been looking at it as I am talking about my neighborhood.
Right.
So the first step, when somebody's talking about community, listen to what they're describing and come right out and ask them, are you describing your neighborhood? Or what community are you describing? Because people don't intentionally mean. I truly believe this. And this is the only way I can function every day, because if not, as people, we lose faith. So the only way I can function every day is to believe that people do not want to intentionally leave other groups of people out. Not that there aren't those kind of people out there, but the majority of people don't intentionally want to leave people out. So listen to what they're saying and then ask them, are you talking about neighborhood or community? Okay, what community are you talking about? Because the community I'm talking about is this community. And start the conversation from a place other than blame and, condemning someone or making people feel guilty. And I think sometimes just asking each other those questions and getting people to realize, you know what, I am just talking about my neighborhood up here. When you're screaming about needing more officers to patrol and officers leaving your area and being sent to other areas of need, and you're complaining this isn't good for the community, are you really talking about community, or are you talking about it's not good for your neighborhood?
Yeah, I love that, because I never thought about it that way, Carmen, like my community versus my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's two big things, and they're different and far apart from each other. Yeah. And I think that's really good that you highlight that, because I talk about community, and now you have me thinking, am I speaking about my community, or am I speaking about my neighborhood, right? Yeah. And so I have to be very aware of that now moving forward, because community is so much bigger, and our neighborhood is a radius of just a few blocks of where kids go and charlamos con los vecinos and things like that, right?
Yeah, and that's why I said, if we can get just people to even ask themselves just that question, yes, now it's like a different switch. Now you can think about things differently, and you observe things differently, and you listen to people differently. And the other thing, to the people who are living in those neighborhoods still, is we still have accountability, because that's where we came from. So if that's our community and we have a vested interest in its success, because that's what's better for all of us, we need to keep giving back to it. We need to keep visiting, and we need to go not just for the parades, not just for our favorite restaurant, not just because there's a fest in the park. We need to think of the kids going to school and whether they have supplies. We need to think at Christmas, you know, whether they have a true meaning of what the spirit is. It's not just opening a gift. It's the feeling of that your community outside of your neighborhood really does care about you.
Yeah.
It's so to the people living in those communities, don't let your pride get in the way of allowing people from other communities, even people who have moved out. Like, don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at you because we left the neighborhood. We may have left the neighborhood and we have personal reasons, but the community has never left us. We're still a part. We still do what we can for it. And I don't consider myself a hypocrite for that. So that's why when you said, you know, you feel a little regret, you feel, as a woman, as a mother, we're always going to do what we need to do. We're mama bears at the end of the day.
That's true.
Proteger a los niños, se tiene que hacer algo. You're going to do what you have to do for your kids, you know? But teaching empathy, compassion, and continuing to do service for those vulnerable people or the people, the community you came from is an important part of it. And having the conversation with the people living there so that they know that you're not just there to make yourself feel better.
Right.
Like, I'm not here bringing a backpack for your kids so I can feel better about the Northwest Side neighborhood I live in. That's being a hypocrite. Coming into the community and making a true connection and asking people who live there what they're in most need of. Not coming in and saying, oh, this is what you need, and throwing it in there and then patting yourself on the back and saying, oh, I went there and delivered all these backpacks. I feel better about myself. Well, they may have gotten backpacks delivered last week. Did you ask them what they need this week? Like, don't come into the neighborhood or the community and identify what you think or how you think they should be living and giving them that. Because that is condescending. You don't go into somebody else's community, somebody else's culture and tell them what they should be wanting, how they should be living, what they should be expecting. That's condescending. Going in there and having real conversations and saying, what do you need? What have you done? What assistance can I be? What are you most? And if they tell you nothing, great. That's it. But don't make your own decision to. And that's why I said the people living in the community need to set their pride aside and be open about what it is they really reopen and what they really need.
Wonderful. That's great advice. I love that. I love that. You know, what do you need? I am guilty of just showing up in the community and doing a small gesture, but not asking the questions. So thank you for reminding all of us that it's bigger than that, you know, showing up once a year or seasonal to give something back to the community. So let's shift the conversation for a moment here. You are the first Latina as vice on the board. That's amazing. I think that's kudos to you. But you also, let's talk about taking your seat at the table, which is a different way of saying it from a lot of other angles when they say you're invited to the table. Why should we take our seat at the table?
Well, it goes back to, I think, something we started talking about earlier, which is your purpose and your roles and your rules. And I refuse to allow somebody else, as what I just said, to decide what it is that I need or I want, or to provide my viewpoint. So if I don't have the tools I need to build my own table and to make my own table, you will hear me screaming from the back of the room. The table will always hear me. That was always my philosophy. Oh, I'm not, that's not my table. I was like, oh, well, we thought you were a part of that. No. I wasn't invited to the table, but you thought I was at the table because you can hear me from the back of the room. So what I tell people, the first part is if you don't have the tools right then and there to create your own table, that's okay. That's a goal then, right? Being in the position to create your own table and have your voice and to bring people up with you to join you to that table. If you don't have that right now, that's okay. Don't wait to be invited to the table. We all know, and my husband, God bless him, he
Your biggest
I told
supporter,
you
who people
before.
can't see him, but he's here.
No, I was trying not to cry right before, is because he showed up here to be with me, and it was like, yeah, so it caught me off guard, and not that he's not always been supportive, but that was that extra, and it's having my husband, having my sisters, having my friends always supporting me, that's always made me confident to, like, oh, you don't have what you need to create your own table right now? That's all right. Get into the room, because they're always going to let you in the room.
Yes.
They're always going to let you in the room for whatever their reasons are. But you can shout from the back of the room, excuse me, what about, give them something to think about, give them something to talk about. And every time you just, and always, and that's why I tell people, I've always, and I learned this when I went from Humboldt Park to Skokie, because I had to assimilate, because they listened to the same music. I didn't have Guess jeans. I didn't know what a swatch was. I didn't know, like, there were all these, the culture there was completely different. It was incredible, but I learned that people would listen if you just smiled at them when you said it, because then you're not threatening. If you're smiling, you're not threatening. And so I learned, okay, well, that's the easy way to get you past your little wall you're trying to build for me. I'm just going to smile at you so you let me in close enough so I can take my seat. So I've been known to nudge people and, share the chair when I've had to. So, muévete para el lado un poco aquí. Share a chair with somebody at the table. I'm not above sharing a chair. Not above sharing a chair.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to tell people, don't be above sharing a chair. It's very, very important. And that goes along with being able to even, my career in the sheriff's office was a blessing. I graduated high school. I had no college. I was on public aid with my two boys, and I got a call from the sheriff's office, and I'm like, holy smokes, I'm going to have a career. And I had no money to go buy the uniforms.
Wow.
And and thank God my brother-in-law, he took out a loan from the credit union. And to this day, I always tell him, even where I sit right now, and that's why I tell people about pride, accept the help. Tell people what you need and accept the help. He knew I didn't have the money. And he went out and gave me everything I needed so I can accept this job and go forward. And I did that the entire time in the sheriff's office. And when the opportunity came up, and it came up from two other women in the sheriff's office that did exactly what I'm talking about. And I tell them all the time, it's, Kelly and Dana, and I hope they're listening. And when they had their seat at the table, they shared their chair with me. They shared the chair.
Wonderful.
They were like, oh, okay, we're going to scoot you over a little bit. And that was important. They heard me yelling from the back of the room. And instead of feeling threatened because, oh no, there's only room for one woman at this table right now. They met their quota. If we let Carmen in here, then I may have to go. And I don't want to go. No, they're like, oh no, there's plenty of room for more women at this table. And they scooted over in their chair a little bit and let me in. And then when they left me their chair. And that led to the possibility of even attending the FBI National Academy. I only had a high school diploma. I didn't have a chance to go back to college. I was fortunate enough in the sheriff's office where I was able to have my career and still meet my husband and have children and have my family together at the same time.
Yes.
It was an incredible opportunity. And then going to the FBI Academy, when you say, your seat at the table, there were 269 people in my session. And only 1% of law enforcement gets to attend this FBI National Academy.
Nice.
So in my session 252, if anyone's listening in 252, there were 269 of us. There were only 21 women in my session.
Look at that.
Those are the numbers. So a predominantly male field, law enforcement. I still tell people to this day, with all the problems and stuff that we have going on that you alluded to earlier in our communities, not just the neighborhoods, you would not know there were only 21 of us in that FBI National Academy. That included people from 20 different countries. We were everywhere. And I say the women, we were everywhere. Socially, academically, all over the place, interacting with everyone everywhere. The men in the academy nicknamed us the Wolf Pack because we showed up everywhere. We showed up in numbers. We would take over a room. That's the power of the purpose and creating your table and letting people know that you're there and not allowing them to deny you. No one has the right to deny you.
I love that. I love that you said like you smile, right? Like, and you have a beautiful smile, by the way. It's like
thank you.
You put it out there, you raise your hand, and you smile, right? And that has power in itself. Instead of kind of being a little condescending, a little bit mean, a bit of rude, right? And we have to learn, right, to take our seat at the table, your seat at the table, whatever form. And I used to struggle with like, are my questions good enough to fit in to be at the table, right? And over time, you learn like you're as intelligent, as smart as everyone else in the room and around you, and that itself is kind of like mind blowing to me. And you're somewhat similar to me. I got married when I was 18 years old, and I knew like when I met you, there was like this major connection between us. And so if we really look at our kind of our life journey, the odds were against us. But you didn't let that deter you. I didn't let that deter me. But I know that there's a lot of women out there who still feel that the odds are against them, that I can't get out of this neighborhood. I can't get out of this situation. I'm never going to grow. I didn't have a high school diploma either, And honestly, the reason why I went back to get my college degree was because they didn't recognize me as an expert in the language industry. But do I use my college degree now? No. Is it important? Yes. Right. What is that advice do we give to other people who, maybe got pregnant early, don't have a high school diploma, but are thinking bigger? Because you know what? We all think bigger. We all dream of something. And sometimes we don't think that our dreams can become a reality, but they can. And they only if you just find, like you said, break your own rules, find that purpose.
So there's so much on that, because I always ask myself that, like, what was it in your life, in my life? What was the difference? Like, there could be women exactly like us in our age who had the exact same experiences. Why do I now sit as the executive clerk for Iris Martinez?
Right.
And someone who I went to grammar school in Von Humboldt isn't even here today. Like, what was the difference? And that's why I go back to, and I get emotional, because that's a real thought. You can't help but think about those things. And it's important and it's powerful, because I go back to the difference is your circle. The difference is your pride, your regrets, your fear. Those are the differences. If you let those things define you, and you don't have a strong enough circle around you to tell you, you got this. Don't listen to them. We'll keep you safe. You've been bruised, you've been battered, you've been beat up. Let us surround you and protect you while you heal, so you can go back out. And your circle doesn't have to just be, it shouldn't be just the women in your life. As a woman, I'm going to tell you that I tell people all the time, and this is another thing to tell women who have made it but are still struggling to get out, is don't allow people to take credit for anything that you have accomplished in your life. They don't get to do that, because you can be grateful for any assistance, for any guidance, for any advice. But at the end of the day, whatever you've accomplished is your accomplishment. It doesn't belong to anybody else. Don't give them that power. It is not theirs. I take absolute responsibility for where I sit today. That is me. The only other people who can take credit for that are the people I give it to. My husband. I'll start with my mother and my father. my
Mhm.
sibling, my husband, my children, my brother-in-law, my nieces, my nephews, my circles. They absolutely can take credit for the roles that they have played in my life that led me to where I sit today.
Yes.
But all the I will never allow somebody to say, oh well, oh yeah, it's because I made her fill out the application. It's because I told her to take that exam to get promoted.
Hmm.
Oh, we and the negative stuff that comes with it. Well, we needed a Hispanic.
Yeah.
We needed a female. Oh yeah, no, I was in a place where I can give her that opportunity. No, you didn't give me an opportunity. I yelled from the back of the room, and when I saw somebody scoot over in the chair, ahí me metí, and I sat at the table. You didn't give me that either. I took that too. So don't ever allow to those women. I don't know how else to say it other than accept your glory, accept where you're sitting, accept all the. It's okay to say thank you to people, but don't give them the power of telling them or making them feel as though they made you.
Mhm.
No one made you.
Mhm.
Your experiences, your choices, your decisions, how you cope, your resiliency, that defined you and made you.
For sure. For sure. So you had siblings, you had your parents, you have your husband, right? You have the backing there, right? How does someone create that community if when they look around themselves, they don't have anyone? Like, where do they go? Where do they start? How do they identify someone? What's your advice on that? Somebody wants to get unstuck. Where do I go? What do I do? Dabble.
I'm a very, I was raised Catholic, and as you grow up, there's things that challenge your faith, but nothing has ever challenged my spirituality.
Hmm.
So my mom used to always say something, and a lot of people know, you make family in life, not friends. That's how you protect yourself. And you have to love yourself and know that you're worthy of more than where you're at.
Beautiful.
And then seek people out that are going to support that. And again, seek all kinds of people out. They may not be in your neighborhood, but they're in your community. They may not be in your neighborhood. So it may not be the man next door. It may not be the woman, la tienda latina or the laundromat or the condo next. They may not be in your neighborhood, but they're in your community. And they're not going to find you through all the noise of everything else going on right now. They're not. You can't sit back and wait for it. If you want it, know that you're worth it, and find those people in your community that are going to support that in you. If you talk to somebody and you're like, I'm thinking of getting my degree, and that person tells you, oh, well, when was the last time you even went to school? Walk away. Don't even answer the question.
Right.
Finish the conversation. Pa fuera, pa'l carajo. Excuse my language. I'm sorry, but go somewhere. Don't even ask any follow-up. Sorry, I have no filter. I should have warned you in advance. I'm doing pretty well, actually. But don't even answer that question. Don't even entertain that. Don't let that negativity in your space.
Right.
Now, if somebody says, that's great, what do you think you want to do? Oh, I don't know yet. Oh, well, why don't you start with a few classes? Hey, how about this? Now, that's somebody who's supporting your end goal. All you said to me was, you want to go back to school. I heard you want to go back to school. If I'm a positive person and I'm going to be a positive person in your life, then I'm going to help you take those baby steps to get to your goal. So I'm going to support your vision. I want to go back to school. What do you want to be? You know what? I don't even know yet. You don't have to know yet. You know what? Why don't you go online and look? You're going to have to get some, if you have no college classes, you're going to have to go get, the prerequisites out of the way anyway and do some testing. Why don't you just start with that? Maybe you'll, find out what you want along the way, but you always have to start with that anyway.
Right.
people willing to give you what the next step is in the purpose that you've already identified for yourself. That's how you get unstuck, is you have to take a step.
There you go.
And then you find the next person. Once you get into school, or once you get the job, or once you get now you look for a person there. Again, people in your community. They may not be from your neighborhood, but you have to actively look for those people.
Mm-hmm. And that's going back to getting uncomfortable with something that you're not comfortable with doing, right? Because not everybody else says, like, let me ask. And that's great advice. That's finding something or someone that connects with your purpose, right? And then breaking those rules, which means getting uncomfortable, so that you can still then become comfortable, so that you can go to the next person and the next person, and then you create your community. And that's awesome. I love that. And we have a lot of saludos for you, Karen, but we do have a question.
Uh-oh.
And someone is asking, while at the table, what advice do you give when they're not here or it's predominantly men?
Welcome to my twin. No, never mind. So once you're at the table, you'll find that is, first of all, much easier than getting to the table in the first place. So the first thing goes back to what I said earlier. Recognize where you came from. So when I went from screaming at the back of the room to sharing a chair, to getting a seat at the table, and then to creating my own table. I recognized my accomplishments, allowed myself to be proud of my accomplishments, thanked those that helped me along the way, because that's how you stay true to your authentic self, is remain humble and remember that there are people who played a role. You're not giving them responsibility, but they did play a role in where you're at. And then once you recognize where you came from, when you're sitting at the table, nothing's difficult. I remember one time I had just gotten promoted, and I was running a unit within in the sheriff's office. And I came to a meeting, and I walked in the room, and my boss, who was a great boss at the time, still a great person, I'm still friends with him today. We walked in the room, and everyone's talking, and then he says, another individual walks in the room and says, now I walked in with my boss, and I'm there with a billfold because I'm giving my presentation. It wasn't a little unit. And another big boss from one of the other departments walks in the room towards my boss, puts his hand out to shake his hand, and said, I didn't know we were allowed to bring our secretaries to take notes.
No.
But you know what?
Eso no se hace.
Eso no se hace.
No.
But how Mikey O says, entonces, I looked over, and like I said, that's why I said I'm still friends with him today. He turns and he says, actually, this is the assistant chief who runs, and he named the unit, and she's here to give a report. And instead of what other people would have done, which is just stayed quiet and kind of laughed and made it seem like the comment was okay. That's the kind of stuff that I already had my seat at the table. That comment said more about that individual than it said about me. Why?
Yes.
Because I sat at that table, I gave my report and my notes, could not deny my knowledge, could not deny my experience, they couldn't deny any of that. And I never once you get to the table, here's the second thing, ladies, please, once you get to the table, don't compare yourself to anybody else there.
Yes.
Don't compare yourself to anybody else there, because none of you guaranteed as similar paths as you and I have had. Even we're different. Why would I compare myself to you? So when you get to the table, acknowledge how far you've already come and be proud of it. And number two, when you get to the table, don't compare yourself to anybody there.
Yes. And you and I actually briefly spoke about that. And to all of our fans who are watching, because I know you have a lot, We're getting to the end of our program.
I
So if
do.
you wanna
I
ask
can't
any
see it. I feel so much better because I can't see faces.
Oh, no. I can't either, but I can only see it here. And I can't see who's on. But if you have any questions, please post them so we get to answer those before we log off. But going back to like not comparing yourself, you and I briefly spoke about that before we actually logged on. And I was saying that there was a person in my life that every time I saw her, I would get like really, ooh, and I would always ask myself, like, why don't I like her? Why don't I like her? And she wasn't a bad person, and she was doing so much for the community. And I had to ask myself, actually, someone said, ask yourself, what is it about her that bothers you? Or like that gives you, triggers these little feelings that you have. And I sat back one day and I started thinking, I was like, it was because it wasn't that I didn't like her. It was because I wanted to be like her, right? I loved what she was doing, what she was accomplishing. And I had to then stop and say, this is who I am. And I have done all of this, right? And maybe the world doesn't know that, because there's one thing about me, I don't share a lot of, it looks like I share, but there's a lot more that I don't share, which is fine with me, right? And I had to accept who I was and not to stop comparing myself, right? Because the reality is that sometimes what we see in social media, we see in the outside world or in the streets, it's not necessarily what we find out that they're living inside their homes, right? We don't know that story behind the scenes. So that comment of don't compare yourself is so like 120% correcto, right?
Yeah.
No te compare con nadie. Don't do that.
Envy is envy will destroy you.
Yes.
And I always tell people, like, it's my life joke that I always say, just smile. I say everything with a smile, and I always said, people won't know. And if I don't like you, I tend to smile harder. And it's because I want to keep your guard down, because I need to figure out what it is about you I don't like. Because, and I think I said this to you, because the fact that I don't like you isn't your problem.
Right.
My problem. So
Yes.
I need to figure out, am I jealous? And I may admire all your successes and may be jealous because I'm capable of doing those things too, and no one recognizes that.
Very
and
true.
And so if you're jealous, it's okay to admit that you're jealous, and then continue to do what you do. And once you recognize that, it's okay. But envy is very dangerous. It can destroy you if you don't figure out that that's your problem, not the other person's problem.
Yeah, I
live a happier life that way too, because it works for me too. Oh, you don't like me? Oh, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, I tried my best. It works both ways.
Very true. Okay, so Martha, thank you, Martha, for watching, says, how do you get your circle to remain positive? Which is a really great question. Or should you just focus on yourself or don't even bother?
Oh, no, you should always bother. So I mentioned earlier, two women who scooted over in the chair to make room for me at the table, and that was Kelly and Dana. And it's funny that this name popped up, but she's not on Facebook, so I know it's not the Martha that I'm referring to. But in my career, I worked with someone, and that was her name, Martha, and she was part of that circle. And I saw her treated differently because her circle didn't meet the vibes of what was going on at the time, or whatever the issue. Because again, when people don't, when people create their table, since it's their table, they get to decide what gets discussed, what kind of people get to sit at that table. They get to discuss all of that. And she always let me just be me. She'd rein me in occasionally. Like when I got too far, she's like, that's not your lane. Stay it. And I respected the role she played, because she always told me when I needed to chill out. So you do, to this Martha, I would say what I learned from that Martha was you need to worry about your entire circle, because just like a chain or a link. How is my circle going to collapse or shrink to protect me when I'm wounded and injured and need time to recover if one of them is broken as well? Then you don't stay true to your responsibility. And you have to do that. You have to make sure that the entire link is strong. Everyone gets their turn. So if you recover, if two of you are need that protection at a time, then your circle should be strong enough to sustain protecting the two of you while you recover and while you heal, so that when you join back in that circle, you can lock elbows instead of just holding onto your fingertips, to make that circle strong enough to protect you. So you should never be worried about just yourself. That's why as women, especially as Latinas, you don't see as many of us succeeding. Because for a long time, the theory was, if there's one of us, if we allow another one to come up, it may knock us out because there's only room for one. And that's why I love where I sit today, because we all know the glass ceilings that Senator, now Clerk Iris Martinez broke herself, and to be able to come into her administration and for her to allow me to do what I'm doing and allow me to make these decisions and create my own table was like justification that all my decisions and all my everything that people were telling me, that my circle was telling me for years, oh, you can do this, you can do that, and keeping all of them strong, they kept lifting me up. And then to have, the clerk say, there's room for you at this table. Right. And I want you to come in here, being that she was the first of a lot, really spoke volumes to me and just let me know that that's what we need to keep doing for other women and especially other Latinas. That's our responsibility. Yes. We're responsible for that. And I take that seriously. That's not a joke to me. So definitely please keep your entire circle strong. Men, women, your children, everybody, your community. Keep saying community, because that,
Great advice. So going back to, before we wrap up, the earlier question, I think I may have read it wrong. So contacts probably need to be replaced. So if you're at the table, you got to sit at the table. What is the one advice you give when they're not hearing you, basically? They're not hearing what you're saying. And so I apologize, Elsa. That's okay. When the people at the table are predominantly men, and we know sometimes what happens there. So what is the advice you would give?
Smile.
Smile.
Smile. Always smile. You cannot match their, how do I describe this? You can't match their mentality because you're not a man. So instead of previously what I said is don't compare yourself to anyone at the table. When you're the only woman at a table of men, and this is not just in law enforcement, this is for, I know there's construction workers and IT. When you're a woman at tables like that, you're not going to match their mentality. Don't think you have to, because you don't. You know what got you to that table. So what role do you play in that environment? Whether it's a company, whether it's an office, whether it's a department, you're at that table already for a reason. So what is the reason you're at that table? What is your scope of responsibility within that company, within that department, within that area? Whatever your scope of responsibility is, you're the only one who can speak about that. Be confident and speak about that.
Yes.
And then when you're not at that table, part number 2 is very important. When you're not at that table and you're walking by the water cooler, you're walking by an office, you're on the elevator, and you run into other people from that table talking about, and remember what you heard while you were sitting there. When you run into, Joe from Human Resources in the elevator, and something he talked about when you were at the table was intriguing, catch Joe by himself in the elevator y pregúntale, but you wanted to ask him
Yeah.
private, because divide and conquer applies to you two ladies.
Yes.
When they're all at the table and you're the only one there, of course they're not going to hear you. They're too busy listening to each other. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. Stay quiet. Take your notes. Catch Joe in the elevator. Catch whoever by the water cooler. You know, in the lobby, walking to McDonald's, wherever you catch them cuando están solo, pick their brain, get their knowledge. Use that and expand your own knowledge. Don't scream when you're at the table. They're not going to hear you that way. That's okay. That's your time to listen. Listening is just as empowering as being acknowledged. You'll get acknowledged. You're not looking for acknowledgement first. You need the knowledge to get power. So get your power. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. It's war, ladies. No, I'm kidding. It's
I
not
love
war,
that.
but it's the same
I'm
thing.
going to start doing the same thing. I'm going to corner that person and start
Take
that
your notes.
conversation.
You think I'm joking. Mira esto. This is because I'm sitting on my desk. Look, I'm not joking.
I know.
Make you
Look,
go to a
I have a
meeting, make a
notebook
list.
for everything. I have one webinars, I have one that's notes, I have one staff meeting. Yo tengo un gabinete ahí lleno de notes.
You need it. Take notes. Divide and conquer. Ask them
Divide and
separately.
conquer.
Don't address it at the table.
That is awesome advice. So, Carmen,
I
we're
hope
at the
we answered
end.
it. Okay.
I believe you did. Also, to answer your question, if you're still here, just pop in a yes or no. But I would agree that you did answer that question.
Okay.
And it's my fault because I actually read it wrong the first time. So, Carmen, we're at the end of our show. See, it went fast. It was informal. We had a great time. You had a fan of lots of saludos. So a lot of people showed up for this show today, which I really, truly appreciate. So I'm going to leave it to, again, thank you for joining our Oye conversation. It's about Oye, Oye, Oye. Listen, learn, take it in, execute, share. There's a wealth of information for us Latinos in general that we need to start sharing and being at the table with each other and building that community. But Carmen, I'm going to leave you with the last words.
Oh, my husband just smirked because he's like, you always get the last word. Like, that's no surprise. I'm looking at him, he's laughing. Yeah, what's new with that? You always get the last word. Quite simply, stay up. And what I mean by stay up is keep moving forward. Stay on your feet. If you stumble, get back on your feet. You don't have to take a step forward right away. Get back on your feet. Stay standing. So that you can support your family, your friends, other women that are trying to come up. So it's just stay up and think about your community. The difference between community and neighborhoods is something that I like to drill home all the time because that's very important. But yeah, that's what I got.
Stay up, stand up, smile.
Yes. That goes without saying. It's always
yes. Smile. No more regrets.
No, don't apologize.
Grab your seat at your table. Yeah. Your table. I'm going to point that. Don't wait to be invited, mi gente. Grab your seat at your table. You belong there. We all belong there. And so with that, we end the show. Thank you once again, Carmen. Thank you, Madame Clark Iris Martinez, for allowing you to be on the show with me. Tell her, yo le mando mucho mis saludos. And we'll see you next month, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.